Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about different types of our cells and the parts of the cells that go into that, or what are the parts inside of the cells. So today, first of all, though, we're going to review. And if you remember back to first trimester, we talked about a whole bunch of words, and I said they're not going to go away. The words are continue to stick around. So we're going to review some of those words right now. So if you remember, they were autotroph and heterotroph, and eukaryote and prokaryote, and then unicellular and multicellular. And unicellular and multicellular were the simpler ones. Uni means one, so that's one-celled organism, and multi means many, so that's many-celled organism. The other two were a little harder, so I broke them down again. So here we go. If you look at prokaryotes and eukaryotes, an organism that is a prokaryote has no nucleus. They are found in unicellular organisms only. And the kingdoms that we talked about that contained the prokaryotic organisms were archaea and bacteria. And something that we're going to learn later that's important is that organisms that are prokaryotes, they cannot be specialized, which means that their cells can't have a specific job. Eukaryotes, on the other hand, have a nucleus, and they are found in mostly multicellular organisms. So the only kingdom that has unicellular eukaryotes is Protist kingdom, but you can find eukaryotes in the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the fungus kingdom, and the Protist kingdom. And these organisms, the multicellular ones, can be specialized. Okay. Next, the two words that we talked about were autotroph and heterotroph. And an autotroph is an organism that gets its energy from the sun. And the two kingdoms that are capable of doing that are the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom. And then heterotrophs are like you and me, and we get our energy from eating nutrients from other organisms. So whether we eat plants or animals, our nutrients come from there. And then fungus are heterotrophs that absorb their nutrients from other organisms. So here the kingdoms are animal, archaea, bacteria, fungus, and protists. So there's a question that's going to appear in the Ed puzzle, so answer that. So cells are the basic unit of life. So they are sometimes called the building blocks of life because all living things are made of cells. So you are made of cells, plants are made of cells, fungus are made of cells, bacteria are made of cells. All things that are alive and have the characteristics of life are made of cells. So red and white blood cells are an example of cells. You have those. Bacteria cells, onion cells, sperm cells, and nerve cells. All of those are examples of types of cells that are found in organisms. Okay. Inside of cells are tiny structures that are called organelles. They're tiny structures or small parts that are found inside of the cells. So some of them are listed there. Some of them are like the cell membrane, the vacuoles, the endoplasmic reticulum, the Golgi apparatus. But if you think of it this way, you have organs inside of your body, and those organs, like your heart and lungs, liver, bones, kidneys, they all have specific jobs that they do inside of your body. Well, just like that, your cells, each individual cell has little tiny organs or organelles that have specific jobs that they do. And that is what we are going to learn about next, is we're going to learn about the small parts that work inside the cell so that your body can do what it needs to do. Because if your cell parts aren't working correctly, then your cells can't work correctly, then your organs can't work correctly, and then you can't work correctly. So we're going to learn about those. Okay. So after organ, so the next thing is we need to talk about is the cell theory. And the cell theory is basically telling us all about cells. The cell theory states that all living things are made of cells, which we just talked about, and that cells carry out all of the functions needed to support life, which is what those cell parts help the cells do. And then cells can only come from other living cells. So if we use the polar bear for an example, a polar bear is a multicellular organism. It is made of many cells. It has fat cells inside that provide energy and insulation to the polar bear. And then those polar bear cubs, each cub began as a single cell, and that came from the mom. So they got an egg from mom and a sperm from dad, and each of those cells combined to create the cub. So the cell theory. So we're going to study both plant and animal cells. There are other types, but in 7th grade, we're just going to study those types. So we're going to learn about both plant and animal cells. What makes plant and animal cells different is the parts that they have inside of them. So plant cells are autotrophs. They are what make plants there are cell parts that make plants an autotroph. And so they have different cell parts or organelles to help them use the energy from the sun to make food. Animals are heterotrophs, so they have cell parts or organelles that help them to use the energy from food they absorb or eat. So we're going to see that difference. There's also differences in the shape and things like that. We'll look at all of those later, but one of the main differences is how they process energy. Okay. So here's some examples of plant cells and animal cells. You can see just some of the difference. They've both been dyed, so they've been added some color added to them so that they would be easier to see. So you can see the plant cells are on the left side of the screen and the animal cells are on the right side of the screen. So those are some things that are important. We're going to look more closely at that, but later, by the time we're done talking about this, you should be able to look at those without labels and know, oh, that one's a plant, those are plant cells and these are animal cells. Okay. So we're going to start talking about the cell organelles, or the small parts inside of the cell. And what's really interesting is, just like your heart has a specific job inside of your body, your nucleus has a very specific job inside of your cell. So each cell part or each organelle has a very specific job. So we're going to look at those specific jobs and take them into account. Okay. So the first cell part we're going to look at, and we're just going to look at two today just to get us started, because we've learned about the nucleus before, so that's easy. The nucleus, and you can see it there in the middle of the cell. It's right here. It's kind of pink. Okay. The nucleus is the control center of the cell. It controls all of the activities of the cell. So it's kind of like the brain for your body. The nucleus controls all the parts of the cell. Your brain controls all the parts of your body. As we go through each part of the cell, we're going to compare it to the school. So if the nucleus controls the cell, that's like how the principal controls what happens inside of the building. So the nucleus controls the cell, the principal controls the school, your brain controls your body. Those are all similar things. So the nucleus is the control center, and a nucleus is found in both plant cells and animal cells. Okay. The second cell part, and this is just the last one we're going to learn today, is the cell membrane. And the cell membrane surrounds the whole outside of the cell. So here it's represented by this purple line, and it's porous. It has the ability for things to go in and out. Kind of think of it like a screen on a window. It allows, it keeps bigger things out, right? A screen does, and then it lets the air come through. So the cell membrane knows what things are supposed to come into the cell and what things are supposed to come out, and it controls that. So it controls what enters and leaves the cell. That word membrane, anytime you see that, it's going to have the same function of controlling what enters and leaves something. So a cell membrane controls what enters and leaves the cell. So that would be like the doors on the school, especially now that we have these fobs that we can control when people come and go. So the doors of the school control who gets to enter and leave the building. So I can come in most of the time. You're allowed to come in certain times. So that's very much like the cell membrane controls when things can come and go. So and a cell membrane is found in both a plant cell and an animal cell. Okay, so that's it. That's all we're going to cover for today. And then on Tuesday of next week, because you don't have school Monday, on Tuesday of next week, we're going to look more into the different cell parts. But I just wanted you to give an idea of how much you're going to learn. So based on what you've learned today, what cell parts can you see in the picture on the left? Okay. And then based on the picture there, do you think that these are animal cells, or do you think that these are plant cells? And then the last question, where we're going to stop here for today, is based on what you've learned, are the cells pictured prokaryotes or eukaryotes? So you might have to review what's a prokaryote and what's a eukaryote, and then what you think that is in the cells. Right. So that's where we're going to stop for today, and then we'll continue on Monday. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you on Monday.